Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Happiness Advantage workshop this afternoon. I am excited for the opportunity to present this information with the key students and participants. I think happiness is one of those topics that we just cannot get enough of. And so when we had the opportunity to talk about, to come up with topics that we wanted to talk about for our April Zoom webinars, I thought about, hey, what about happiness? What about sharing the importance of it and how it can help us in our overall success? And again, it doesn't help right now with all of the talk about the COVID virus and us being sheltered in and all of just everything that's going on. You cannot get, you can't talk enough about something that's positive and what about happiness? And so that's what we're going to talk about today, is the happiness advantage is what it's called. And I hope by the end of our time this afternoon, you will see and understand that, or whenever you watch this, because you may not be watching this right now, you may watch it later, so it might be in the morning, so it doesn't matter. But by the time we finish our time, you will have a better understanding of what is meant by the happiness advantage and how the mindset, the positive mindset, and starting from a happiness, a point of positivity, how that impacts every area of your life, not just your personal life, but your professional life, your school life, every area of your life, how leading with happiness, leading with positivity, how that helps us in our overall achievement of success. So we're going to get started. In the course of this video, I have a PowerPoint presentation, but I also have a video that is about 12 minutes in length. And it actually will give a little bit even more insight into the research behind happiness. Yes, someone does actually research happiness. I am a proponent of positive psychology. I think that I love learning about things where that there's things that we can do to help us improve in areas of our lives that we may not be as skilled in or as proficient in, but with the growth mindset and with the ability to be able to do certain things, that it can impact our brains and it can change us and help us to improve in areas. I love that. And so that's why I like positive psychology, because it's all about improvement. It's all about us being able to achieve our goals and to become just better individuals. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide, which is blank, but that's because there's a question coming up. And the question is, which comes first, happiness or success? How do you typically think about when you think about success? And that's a word that we use quite a bit, success. But when you think about it, what typically comes first? Is it happiness or success? And I think we don't think a lot about it because it's not a common or normal question, but if you just kind of stop and think about it, what do you think comes first, happiness or success? So think about it, female. I'll give you just like 60 seconds to think about it without me talking. I don't know if that was 60 seconds, but that's long enough. Okay, so does success equal happiness? True or false? This is another question, okay? Does success equal happiness? So if you achieve some type of endeavor, a goal, if you get an A in a class, or if you get a job that you've been wanting, you're successful in it, does that equal happiness? True or false? And what comes first? So we go back to the first question. Is it happiness or success? Okay, so those are two questions, and hopefully by the time that we finish, you'll be able to have a better definitive answer for either one of them. If you're kind of like, I'm not sure, Michelle, I don't know if it's happiness comes first or success comes second, or if success equals happiness, and if I get what I want, I'm always happy, but maybe by the time we finish that we'll have a little bit better understanding with that. So our workshop today is based off, again, off of the work and the research of, positive psychologists. So positive psychology propose that our brains are literally hardwired to perform at their ultimate best, not when we are negative or even in a neutral state. Because sometimes we may not be negative per se, we may not be overly positive about something. We're just kind of like, I'm in between. It's, it's whatever. And so that's where we may be. And unfortunately, if that's where our brain happens to be most of the time, then that's not a good thing. Because our brains are, as it says, literally hardwired to perform at their best when we are more positive, when we are operating from a positive mindset. And you're going to see, well, what's that have to do with happiness? Well, guess what? You tend to be a lot more positive when you are happy than when you are not happy. Think about the times when you have been in a, sad or in a, or even mad or upset or disappointed, frustrated. Think about what you talk about in those instances and situations when you are not, happy. We tend to be more positive. Or we tend to be more negative, when we're unhappy, and in our thought and even in our conversations with others. So, but just know that our brains are wired to perform better when we are in a positive state. So this is where I get to stop talking and you get to watch and kind of find out a little bit about the background of this whole talk that I'm today. So let me work on trying to switch over here so that you can see what I'm going forward in my presentation and not, well, let me do this. So that I can. All right, I think I got it. Okay. So here we go with a TED Talk from one of my favorite positive psychologists, Shawn Achor. So let me let you watch this.
When I was 7 years old and my sister was just 5 years old, we were playing on top of a bunk bed. I was 2 years older than my sister at the time. I mean, I'm 2 years older than her now, but at the time that meant she had to do everything that I wanted to do, and I wanted to play war. So we were up on top of our bunk beds, and on one side of the bunk bed, I had put out all my G.I. Joe soldiers and weaponry, and on the other side were all my sister's Milos and ponies and ready for a cavalry charge. There are differing accounts of what actually happened that afternoon, but since my sister is not here with us today, let me tell you the true story, which is my sister is a little bit on the clumsy side. And somehow, without any help or push from her older brother at all, Suddenly, Amy disappeared off the top of the bunk bed and landed with this crash on the floor. And I nervously peered over the side of the bed to see what had befallen my fallen sister, and saw that she had landed painfully on her hands and knees on all fours on the ground. I was nervous because my parents had charged me with making sure that my sister and I played as safely and as quietly as possible. And seeing as how I had accidentally broken Amy's arm just 1 week before, heroically pushing her out of the way of an oncoming imaginary sniper bullet, for which I have yet to be thanked. I was trying as hard as I could. She didn't even see it coming. I was trying as hard as I could to be on my best behavior, and I saw my sister's face this wail of pain and suffering and surprise, threatening to erupt from her mouth and threatening to wake my parents from the long winter nap for which they had settled. So I did the only thing my little frantic 7-year-old brain could think to do to avert this tragedy. If you have children, you've seen this hundreds of times before. I said, Amy, wait, don't cry, don't cry. Did you see how you landed? No human lands on all fours like that. Amy, I think this means you're a unicorn. Now that was cheating because there was nothing in the world my sister would want more than not to be Amy, the hurt 5-year-old little sister, but Amy, the special unicorn. Of course, this was an option that was open to her brain at no point in the past. And you could see on my poor, manipulated sister's face conflict, as her little brain attempted to devote resources to feeling the pain and suffering, surprise she just experienced, or contemplating her newfound identity as a unicorn. And the latter won out. Instead of crying, instead of ceasing our play, instead of waking my parents with all the negative consequences that would have ensued for me, instead, a smile spread across her face, and she scrambled right back up onto the bunk bed with all the grace of a baby unicorn, with one broken leg. What we stumbled across at this tender age of just 5 and 7, we had no idea at the time, was something that was going to be at the vanguard of a scientific revolution occurring 2 decades later in the way that we look at the human brain. What we had stumbled across is something called positive psychology, which is the reason that I'm here today and the reason that I wake up every morning. When I first started talking about this research outside of academia, out with companies and schools, the very first thing they said to never do is to start your talk with a graph. The very first thing I wanted to do is start my talk with a graph. This graph looks boring, but this graph is the reason that I get excited and wake up every morning. And this graph doesn't even mean anything. It's fake data. What we found is if I got this data back studying you here in the room, I would be thrilled because there's very clearly a trend that's going on there, and that means that I can get published, which is all that really matters. The fact that there's one weird red dot that's up above the curve, there's one weird in the room, you know who you are, I saw you earlier. That's no problem. That's no problem, as most of you know, because I can just delete that dot. I can delete that dot because that's clearly a measurement error, and we know that's a measurement error because it's messing up my data. So one of the very first things we teach people in economics and statistics and business and psychology courses is how in a statistically valid way do we eliminate the weirdos? How do we eliminate the outliers? So that we can find the line of best fit, which is fantastic if I'm trying to find out how many Advil the average person should be taking. 2. But if I'm interested in potential, if I'm interested in your potential or for happiness or productivity or energy or creativity, what we're doing is we're creating the cult of the average with science. If I ask a question like how fast can a child learn how to read in a classroom, scientists change the answer to how fast does the average child learn how to read in that classroom, and then we tailor the class right towards the average. Now, if you fall below the average on this curve, then psychologists get thrilled because that means you're either depressed or you have disorder or hopefully both. We're hoping for both because our business model is if you come into a therapy session with one problem, we want to make sure you leave knowing you have 10. So you'll keep coming back over and over again. We'll go back into your childhood if necessary, but eventually what we want to do is make you normal again. But normal is merely average. And what I posit, what positive psychology posits, is that if we study what is merely average, we will remain merely average. Then instead of deleting those positive outliers, what I intentionally do is come into a population like this one and says why. Why is it that some of you are so high above the curve in terms of your intellectual ability, athletic ability, musical ability, creativity, energy levels, your resiliency in the face of challenge, your sense of humor, whatever it is, instead of deleting you, what I want to do is study you. Because maybe we can glean information, not just how to move people up to the average, but how we can move the entire average up at our companies and schools worldwide. The reason this graph is important to me is when I turn on the news, it seems like the majority of the information is not positive. In fact, it's negative. Most of it's about murder, corruption, diseases, natural disasters, and very quickly, my brain starts to think that's the accurate ratio of negative to positive in the world. What that's doing is creating something called the medical school syndrome, which if you know people who have been to medical school during the first year of medical training, as you read through a list of all the symptoms and diseases that could happen, suddenly you realize you have all of them. have a brother-in-law named Bobo, which is a whole nother story. Bobo married Amy the unicorn. Bobo called me on the phone from Yale Medical School. And Bobo said, Sean, I have leprosy. Which even at Yale is extraordinarily rare. But I had no idea how to console poor Bobo because he had just gotten over an entire week of menopause. See, what we're finding is not necessarily the reality that shapes us, but the lens through which your brain views the world that shapes your reality. If we can change the lens, not only can we change your happiness, we can change every single educational and business outcome at the same time. When I applied to Harvard, I applied on a dare. I didn't expect to get in, and my family had no money for college. When I got a military scholarship 2 weeks later, they allowed me to go. Suddenly, something that wasn't even a possibility became a reality. When I went there, I assumed everyone else would see it as a privilege as well, that they'd be excited to be there. Even if you're in a classroom full of people smarter than you, you'd be happy just to be in that classroom, which is what I felt. But what I found there is while some people experienced that, when I graduated after my 4 years and then spent the next 8 years living in the dorms with the students, Harvard asked me to. Wasn't that guy. But what happened, I was an officer of Harvard to counsel students through the difficult 4 years. And what I found in my research, my teaching, is that these students, no matter how happy they were with the original success of getting into the school, 2 weeks later, their brains were focused not on the privilege of being there, nor on their philosophy or their physics. Their brain was focused on the competition, the workload, the hassles, the stresses, and complaints. When I first went in there, I walked into the freshman dining hall, which is where my friends from Waco, Texas, which is where I grew up. I know some of you have heard of it. When they come to visit me, they look around, they say, this freshman dining hall looks like something out of Hogwarts in the movie Harry Potter, which it does. This is Hogwarts in the movie Harry Potter, and that's Harvard. When they see this, they say, Sean, why do you waste your time studying happiness at Harvard? Seriously, what does a Harvard student possibly have to be unhappy about? Embedded within that question is the key to understanding the science of happiness. Because what that question assumes is that our external world is predictive of our happiness levels, when in reality, if I know everything about your external world, I can only predict 10% of your long-term happiness. 90% of your long-term happiness is predicted not by the external world, but by the way your brain processes the world. And if we change it, if we change our formula for happiness and success, what we can do is change the way that we can then affect reality. What we found is that only 75% of job successes, only 25% of job successes are predicted by IQ. 75% of job successes are predicted by your optimism levels, your social support, and your ability to see stress as a challenge instead of as a threat. I talked to a boarding school up in New England, probably the most prestigious boarding school, and they said, we already know that. So every year, instead of just teaching our students, we also have a wellness week. And we're so excited. Monday night, we have the world's leading expert coming in to speak about adolescent depression. Tuesday night is school violence and bullying. Wednesday night's eating disorders. Thursday night is the illicit drug use. And Friday night, we're trying to decide between risky sex or happiness. I said that's most people's Friday nights. Which I'm glad you liked, but they did not like that at all. Silence on the phone. And into the silence, I said, I'd be happy to speak for your school, but just, that's not a wellness week. That's a sickness week. What you've done is you've outlined all the negative things that can happen, but not talked about the positive. The absence of disease is not health. Here's how we get to health. We need to reverse the formula for happiness and success. In the past 3 years, I've traveled to 45 different countries, working with schools and companies in the midst of an economic downturn. And what I found is that most companies and schools follow a formula for success, which is this: if I work harder, I'll be more successful. And if I'm more successful, then I'll be happier. That undergirds most of our parenting styles, our managing styles, the way that we motivate our behavior. And the problem is it's scientifically broken and backwards for two reasons. First, every time your brain has a success, you just change the goalpost of what success looks like. You got good grades, now you have to get better grades. You got into a good school, now you have to get a better school. You got a good job, now you have to get a better job. You hit your sales target, we're going to change your sales target. And if happiness is on the opposite side of success, your brain never gets there. What we've done is we've pushed happiness over the cognitive horizon as a society. And that's because we think we have to be successful, then we'll be happier. The real problem is our brains work in the opposite order. If you can raise somebody's level of positivity in the present, then their brain experiences what we now call a happiness advantage, which is your brain at positive performs significantly better than it does at negative neutral stress. Your intelligence rises, your creativity rises, your energy levels rise. In fact, what we found is that every single business outcome improves. Your brain at positive is 31% more productive than your brain at negative neutral stress. You're 37% better at sales. Doctors are 19% faster, more accurate at coming up with the correct diagnosis when positive instead of negative neutral stress, which means we can reverse the formula. If we can find a way of becoming positive in the present, then our brains work even more successfully, as we're able to work harder, faster, and more intelligently. What we need to be able to do is reverse this formula so we can start to see what our brains are actually capable of. Because dopamine, which floods into your system when you're positive, has two functions. Not only does it make you happier, it turns on all the learning centers in your brain, allowing you to adapt to the world in a different way. We found that there are ways you can train your brain to be able to become more positive. In just a 2-minute span of time, done for 21 days in a row, we can actually rewire your brain, allowing your brain to actually work more optimistically and more successfully. We've done these things in research now in every single company that I've worked with, getting them to write down 3 new things that they're grateful for 21 days in a row, 3 new things each day. And at the end of this, their brain starts to retain a pattern of scanning the world, not for the negative, but for the positive first. Journaling about one positive experience you've had over the past 24 hours allows your brain to relive it. Exercise teaches your brain your behavior matters. We find that meditation allows your brain to get over the cultural ADHD that we've been creating by trying to do multiple tasks at once, and allows our brains to focus on the task at hand. And finally, random acts of kindness or conscious acts of kindness. We get people, when they open up their inbox, to write one positive email praising or thanking somebody in their social support network. And by doing these activities, and by training your brain, just like we train our bodies, what we found is we can reverse the formula for happiness and success, and in doing so, not only create ripples of positivity, but create a real revolution. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video of Sean Aker and explaining the happiness advantage, because I've just watched it again. I've watched this video so many times, y'all don't even know. But every time I watch it, it just reminds me the power that we have in influencing outcomes in the different situations in our life. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had a few laughs, because I know I always do. I love his stories, but more importantly, focusing on what he said about that happiness advantage. And so we're going to continue on with the PowerPoint, and to continue to talk a little bit more about this afternoon. So just let me get back to the PowerPoint, and so I can do. All right, so here we go. And I know I had moved ahead a couple of slides. Let me see if I can get it to move back, which doesn't look like I can. But there are a couple of things that I want to really point out from what was shared by Sean Aker, Dr. Aker, in his presentation about the happiness advantage. And so I know I'm on principle 2. I kind of went past a little bit principle 1, but principle 1 of our discussion today deals with the happiness advantage itself. And so just to reiterate, when we are happy, when our mindsets and moods are positive, and that's when we're talking about happiness. Happiness, we know, is something that does come and does go, unfortunately, and it's usually based off of different events and things that are happening in our life. But even beyond that, we're talking about the mindset, and how we see the world, or how our brain processes the things that we're seeing and going through in our lives. So when our mindset and our mood are positive, we are smarter, more motivated, and thus more successful. So we talked about that. What comes first? Does success equal happiness? And he talks about in his talk about that formula, that our formula oftentimes is backwards, that we feel that the more successful we are, the more happier we will be. But we all know that is not always true. We may be happy in an instance when we achieved something that we had worked on, worked for, got a particular grade, or we accomplished something. We have that feeling of happiness or joy for that time. But then we got to go right back. Okay, well, now I got to do this. I got to do more. I got to do better. I got to achieve this, so I can keep this feeling. And so that's why that formula is backwards, if we think that success comes before happiness. But as we're seeing, that the research is telling us, is that actually happiness helps us to be more successful. So when our minds, and when our mindset is more positive, our mood is more positive, then our brain actually is working better, which will result in greater outcomes, more positive, more success actually will happen. So happiness is the center and success actually revolves around it. And so happiness, how do we, increase that happiness? And so he gave some different things that we'll talk about a little bit more as we go on. But there, it doesn't, to help us be more positive and create that mindset of happiness. How do we do that? And so there are several things that we can do. Meditation, spending time, with people that we enjoy, doing random acts of kindness, exercise, doing, so there's not, it's not a lot, not hard things that we have to do to help us increase our levels of happiness, but it is the things that we have to do intentionally about that. So now I'm on slide 2, which is principle 2. So the fulcrum and the lever, changing your performance by changing your mindset. So adjust your mindset. How do we do that? You see in this picture here with the fulcrum being that tiny little thing, that lever, that the lever is on, and trying to lift something strong, but that stone, and that fulcrum is going to be that thing that's actually going to make this man, who probably weighs less than that big old stone, be able to do that. So if we adjust our mindset, just like that mindset, our mindset is like that fulcrum, that little thing there that's going to make the biggest difference in the world for this man to be able to lift that big old heavy stone. So we can just adjust our mindsets, then we will have tremendous amount of ability and power to be able to lift whatever it is that we're going through. And I know right now we're all experiencing discomfort. Classes have been changed from face-to-face to online. We're being sheltered in. We can't go and do like we are normally used to doing. And so that is causing us a lot of just frustration and just angst. And that right now, I mean, and that type of mindset is not helping us achieve the levels of success that we all need right now. We're coming upon the end of the semester. And so finals are coming up. You have papers that are due. And if you are working or operating out of a mindset of frustration and anger and just sadness, it is going to affect your ability to be able to operate at your prime in your schoolwork and actually in your interactions with others around you. So that mindset is key. So principle 2 of the happiness advantage is the fulcrum and the lever, changing your performance by changing your mindset. And it is possible for us to rewire these brains and to have a different mindset. Also, principle 3, the Tetris effect, training your brain to capitalize on the possibilities. I don't know about you all. I remember Tetris. That was a popular video game when I was young, believe it or not. That was a long time ago. But I remember Tetris, and it was all about trying to fit them pieces into, you're trying to find a way to fit those pieces into pieces. And I wasn't ever really good at it because it took me a while to understand what I was trying to do. But the idea is that of this visual is that training your brain to capitalize on possibilities. So we do have the ability to be able to change our mindsets, to retrain our brains, to if we have a natural bent, and some of us do, to think negative or to see the negative first before we ever think about any positives, that might be your natural bent. But we can change that behavior and retrain our brains. And so we have the opportunity to do that and to focus on opportunity versus on looking at the negatives. And so we want to begin to do that, because that's what's going to help us to maintain those levels of positivity, is by changing that perspective, that when we look and we scan around us, we're looking for opportunity and possibilities first versus the things that won't work or don't work or that is wrong. And so that's something that I really appreciate about, again, the positive psychology, is the ability to retrain our brains. And principle 4, falling up, capitalizing on the downs to build upward momentum. Study after study shows that if we are able to conceive of a failure, to look at failure as an opportunity for growth, we are all the more likely to experience that growth. The growth mindset. Some of you might have heard about that, maybe participated in a workshop before about the growth versus the fixed mindset. But really learning how to see failure, or even when things don't quite go the way that we would like them to go, or even being in situations that we don't want to be in, seeing them as potential opportunities. That is a great way to increase your level of positivity and your happiness in life. So it's about using the downward momentum to propel ourselves in the opposite direction. It's about capitalizing on our setbacks and adversity to become even happier. So don't you think that would be wonderful? Because I know I have a lot, if I look back over my life, I've had a lot of missteps. I've had a lot of things that I didn't get right the first time. But if I had stayed in those places where I had failed, and I had never tried or had never learned from those situations, where would I be right now? So I know that it is, failure does lead to success. That's one of our keys to success for our program. And so that's also part of this happiness advantage. So we can become more motivated. We can even become more successful as we learn from the times when we have these downward times, or the negativity, or even the events where we don't succeed. The fifth principle, the Zorro Circle. I don't know if you all are familiar with Zorro, but I remember Zorro was one of the TV shows that came on Saturday mornings when I was growing up. And I would watch it because it was just, it was just interesting, because Zorro, he looked, mysterious, and he had that sword, and he could do anything he want with that sword. But the Zorro Circle, what it has to do with the happiness advantage is feeling that we are in control, that we are masters of our own. We have to, of our own fate, at work and at home and at school, is one of the strongest drivers of both well-being and performance. If you don't feel like you are in control of what is happening in your life, that directly affects your mindset. You're going to feel less positive. You're going to be more negative, because you don't think that I have any control over anything that is happening in my life. So happiness and health have less to do with how much control we actually have, and more with how much control we think we have. It's all in the mind. It's all the mindset, the way that we think, the way that we view, the way that we think about what's going on in our life affects actually our disposition and our happiness and even our overall health. So no matter what you may have heard from motivational speakers, coaches, and the like, reaching for the stars is, sometimes maybe not always work out. To say just reach for the stars, just work harder, not, whatever. But it's really about the way you think about it. If you think that you can do it, if you think that it's possible, that you think that you have the ability to be able to do it, you're more likely to succeed. And so, as the Harvard Business School professor Peter Bergman advises, don't write a book, write a page. So you have control of that, because sometimes we have set such goals for ourselves that we think that it's not possible because there's so many elements of it that we are out of our control. But if you can take command of those things that you have control over, it really does improve your levels of happiness and positivity. And principle 6, the 20-second rule. With limited willpower, we need to make small energy adjustments to reroute the path of least resistance and instead build better habits. So what does that mean? How to turn bad habits into good ones by minimizing barriers to change. So I talk about common sense, and I always tell my mother, common sense is not common. It's not common. It's not common action. Even though it may make sense, you think everybody should know that, but everybody may know it, but they may not put it into action. So that's why when even doctors know better than anyone the importance of exercise and diet, why is it that 44% of them are overweight or still have different habits that affect their overall health? Our willpower weakens the more that we use it. So we have to do more than just like, I can do this, you know, that willpower. We have to actually make those steps, make those small changes that will help us to actually be more successful. So what does that mean? Creating little habits or changing little things. One thing, one 20-second rule might be even how you just get up in the morning. It might be like if you have your alarm clock right there next to your bed and it's easy for you, or your phone, because I know now we use our phones. Your phone is right there. So when it goes off, I just have to tap it. So one of a 20-second rule to really help you get up earlier, or to, you know, to stop procrastinating getting up, is that you move your phone across the room. So that in order for you to turn it off, that you have to actually get up, move, and turn it off. So that was an action. So it's actually a little change in your rituals or your habits, rerouting, okay, what you're doing to make those things happen. So those are little things that we have, things that we can do to redirect ourselves so that we are able to make those changes and to be able to have, you know, to gain that more positive mindset. Because the more that we achieve, you know, we see that, oh, the little things that I'm doing, it's making an impact. Believe it or not, the happier you get. And so principle 7, the social investment. Invest in our friends, peers, family, so that when challenges and stress present themselves, you have a social support network. Why social support is the single greatest asset? Because social relationships are the single greatest investment you can make in the happiness advantage. So the people in our lives, we cannot discredit the importance of the people in our lives. And so we've got to make those investments in our friends, our peers, our family members, in order to increase our level of happiness in the present. So right now is a perfect time because we're sheltered in. Some of you may be living with your families, you know, your parents. You're getting to spend some quality time. I know that they say the statistics is that, you know, occurrences of domestic violence and whatever will happen, but also at the same time the opportunity. Because again, I refuse to scale the environment and only look for the negative. I'm gonna look for the opportunities. Opportunities that I get to spend time with my family when I may not have always been able to spend as much time with them. And that's a good thing because I'm making a social investment into the lives, into the relationships that will really help to propel me forward. And then the ripple effect. Sean Aker ended his talk about that ripple effect. If we were able to, you know, just to create, increase our levels of happiness, that it begins to make that ripple. Once we start capitalizing on the happiness advantage in our own lives, the positive changes quickly ripple out. This is why positive psychology is so powerful, because it doesn't only impact you, it impacts others around you. It is just, and I love that analogy of that ripple. When you throw that little pebble into the water and it just goes out and out and out, you see. That's what we are capable of doing by us being, by our own selves being more positive. We affect others and we can help make them more positive, or they might at least become curious as to why you have such a, you know, a good outlook, a disposition. And then you can tell them, share with them what you're doing to help, you know, increase the levels of happiness or positivity in your life. So like, here's a quote from Daniel Goldman: like secondhand smoke, the leakage of emotions can make a bystander an innocent casualty of someone else's toxic state. Excuse me. So our emotional state does affect others, either whether positive or negative. So luckily, positive emotions are also contagious. Just like those negative emotions are contagious, positive emotions are contagious, which make them a powerful tool in our quest for the high performance in the workplace, in our homes, in the school, wherever we're at. It becomes contagious, and that ripple effect can occur. So the happier everyone is around you, the happier you will become. One way to build rapport and therefore extend influence is with eye contact, if you can. I know we're right now through Zoom, and I mean, I like to see everyone. I love to be around people. I'm a people person. And right now that's being hindered in a lot of ways, but I am appreciating what technology is allowing for me to be able to still have contact with others. So each one of us is like that butterfly. And each tiny move towards a more positive mindset can send ripples of positivity through our organizations, our families, and even our communities. And so just like Sean Aker said, there's a number of things that you can do. Writing down 3 things every day that are, that have happened positive in your life. Sending, an email to someone in your email chain, in your email list. Just doing random acts of kindness, exercising, just any of those things will help to affect your own levels of happiness, and that ripple effect will actually affect others as well. And so with that, I'm going to, I don't know if anyone is actively on the line right now with any questions, but here's the deal. If there isn't, and you might watch this later, you can always email me with any questions or anything that you have regarding the Happiness Advantage, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions at that time. So with that, I think we are done, and I appreciate the opportunity to share this information with you all about the Happiness Advantage. And I hope that it helps and that it does help you to be a little bit more happy. Thank you.